I'm actually incredibly worried about Krusty at the end of this episode, because finding out about the flavored text of how certain flavored text on weapons can actually do things and cause things to happen actually changes the ballgame of this series by a large margin. Because from what we found out in this episode from the Researcher Guild is that, supposedly, I could have got this information wrong, but they said Mount Fuji and Akaba are having their distance widening. Like, for instance, the distance between them are getting larger, and that means the entirety of the world is expanding, if I understood that information correctly. So if that is true, that means that there's probably a weapon or some form of flavored text or something that's expanding the overall world, or something else is going on here. But the reveal of flavored weapons, like flavored text weapons, having certain specials is actually kind of scary. It's not talking about specials in the sense of like, oh, after every 5 kills, you'll have a power-up of a vortex or something. It's not like a special effect like that. It's like a background to the sword. Like, I've always seen in certain RPGs, when I use certain weapons, like, there's always certain dialogue on swords. Like, I saw some swords say, this sword is only for the people that can wield such strength. For instance, people that have the strongest strength and the people that are unmatched in physical strength. I've seen weapons like that, and, you know, usually you would have to have a lot of strength to use something like that. Or I've seen weapons that say the weapon in use will curse its owner, or the past owner of this weapon was once cursed. I've seen, you know, actual sword descriptions of this type of stuff in RPGs. And if flavor texts are actually real, for instance, they can actually prove to be true, because we get to see an example of this at the end of the episode, this actually has me quite scared, because I'll get into the specifics of this in just a second. So the end of this episode, Krusty, he dies. He fucking dies, but I don't know necessarily if he is dead, or dead, or did he get teleported? Because the sword, or the scythe, is called Disaster. And when you have a weapon called Disaster in an RPG, that is not good. Oof. Especially when it does a side effect like that. Any weapon that's called Disaster in an RPG has to have a terrifying description. And so, what it did to Krusty, this is what I'm thinking most likely happened. Judging by Disaster, the title Disaster, and judging by it being a scythe, I feel like maybe it didn't necessarily kill Krusty. It might have absorbed him inside of the weapon. That's what I think might have happened. Because the entire example of this, the way he disappears and the way the arm goes off of her, it makes me think of that. Because the way the sword was glowing and the way it was having a vortex and all that, it looked like it was trying to suck him inside of the, like, scythe or whatever. So, that could be what happened. Krusty could be inside the scythe. And this actually brings up the other perspectives I want to talk about. So, since we found out about flavored text, this makes me believe that something like Frostmourne is possible in this series, which is pretty fucking scary. Because imagine, if you know what Frostmourne is, imagine a sword like that, since it has flavor text like it does. You know for a fact it would have a flavor text of stealing the souls of its victims with every cut or slice it does, or every kill. Imagine if you had a weapon like Frostmourne that could do that stuff. Suck in the souls of its victims inside of it. That would be pretty fucking terrifying. It would. So, like, I mean, this brings an entirely different level to the playing field of this series. Because, like, what if there was a sword that could cause you to become a slave or something? You know, every time it slices you, you become a slave. Or a sword that will, like, you know, completely control your, like, brain or something. Like, it'll curse you, and it'll, like, make you become a slave to the sword or something. I mean, it's possible. There is weapons like this I've seen descriptions like. So, this brings up an entirely different thought process to this series. Like, what's gonna happen? Like, what's gonna happen to Krusty? What's gonna happen to, I think the girl's name is Sansa? Like, what is gonna happen to these characters? I mean, why is the world of Akaba continuing to expand? So, besides those overall events that make me question a lot of things, we get a couple of other details. For instance, we find out about the differences between the different genders. For instance, the women and men. Now, it's not just necessarily the differences of men and women, we all pretty much know that, but we find out the differences in the game. For instance, you have it to where, like, if you chose a female avatar, and you wanted to play as a female, okay? If you did not change your avatar soon, like Akatsuki did in the earlier part of Log Horizon, you will slowly have your voice change, and your vocal cords, like, your entire voice will change, and your body will grow more feminine. That's pretty much what would happen. And that's actually pretty strange. Like, what kind of, like, phenomenon is this for the person's body, even if you were a guy, for your voice to change into a girl. Like, what is causing this? So, there's a lot of questions and mysteries around that. That explains how there could possibly be traps in this series now. Because after such a long time staying in a female body, or even a male body, you will change your voice. Imagine Katsuki as a dude. Oh god. Oh god. Oh god. No. 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 Okay. Race. Fuck. No. I'm not even gonna think about that again. But anyways. Okay, so we get a lot of, a nice good character development for Akatsuki in this episode. You see development between her guild members, how she opens up and she's accepting to work with them and try to get along with them. There's just a lot of character development for Akatsuki in this episode. You just get to see her open up as a character, and she gets to actually talk to her lord once again in the afterlife, which was really awesome. I love that moment. The way the moment was done with the atmosphere and the music, like with no voices whatsoever, just the music, that was a beautiful scene. And speaking of the afterlife, we find out all the memories and shards that everybody forget, like when they give up their memories to be revived, it's actually in that lake. It's in that lake, that pool and lake that has like water in it. Like, I'm guessing somewhere on the moon or something, judging from the opening sequence and the way we saw it in the first episode. But all that water is memories, fragments of memories from everybody else that sacrificed their memories to go back. And we also find out the process of being revived is not instant. It takes some time to actually get revived. So, like I said, that's pretty freaking cool. Overall, a very decent episode. We'll have to see exactly what happens, because the overall ending conclusion of this episode has me intrigued on what's going to happen to Krusty. Is he actually dead? Is he dead? I mean, what exactly is going to happen to him? So tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I love you all so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.